an easy job. And we looked at each other and we were like, and we both understood when the universe is throwing you a high five. So we were like, yeah, absolutely. And so we ran down the stairs and jumped on that opportunity as fast as we could. We hopped on the Polaris. He rolls us up to the front gate. Get to the front gate. It's the main gate for the main site. We walk into the office, which was just a trailer in between two dirt lanes of rocks and dirt, which water trucks used to have to pour water on every couple hours because the sun would get so hot on the rocks that it would get so hot on the site that it was dangerous. It was lethal. So they had to have water trucks pour water on the rocks. It was a fun place. So we go into this mobile trailer, and it's chaos. There's stacks of paper everywhere. There's, all these different signs. There's all these different directions, number listings, and it all relatively looks the same, so it's indistinguishable as of right now. New to everything. So we walk in, and the person who is in there basically turns around, gives us a 5-minute orientation, and then walks out. The 5-minute orientation provided little to no information on what we were actually supposed to record, where we were supposed to put it, when we were supposed to record, and who to get in contact with to basically tell different truck drivers, supply chain, business people, OSHA, where to go. There was no map, nothing provided. And so what ended up happening was we looked at each other, and there was a line of, because once the orientation was done, he ran out and said, "This is y'all's job." And so we were in charge. So we looked at each other and we just said, let's record everything. So truck drivers were a little upset that day, but they understood. We recorded every number that we could find on every semi, every truck, everything, and wrote it down. We're like, there's no way we'll miss anything if we just write it all down. So we had so many numbers written down by the end of the day. And we figured it out, over time. We figured out a system, and we got it working. And what ended up happening was, this place, since it was a place where there was a high profile as far as the country was concerned, I mean, it was a big deal. For everyone on the Gulf, affected a lot of us. It really upset me for a very long time and kind of drove me as far as my motivation and my energy. And since it was such a high-profile place, there were high-profile people that would show up. There was one time where the Admiral of the Navy was supposed to show up, and I was tasked with making sure his parking spot did not get taken at the front of the job site. Being that I was tasked with such a honorable job, I went ahead and did the exact opposite of that and became the unofficial bathroom monitor, which I happened to be stationed right in front of. So instead of, stopping people from parking, which didn't happen there, I would stop people before they went to the bathroom and ask them for their bathroom pass to make sure that they were okay to use our facilities. You have to understand, these guys are at least in their 40s, Alabama construction, hard men. These are some tough people. Ornery, you might say. But cool. There's some great ones everywhere. But the environment's definitely rough around the edges. So I had a mixed bag of responses. I'd have people coming in who were... I have people come by and be like, "Oh, sir, I need to see a bathroom pass," and "Man, F you, buddy," and just roll on past me, and I'd be like, "All right, I'll write your name down," and threaten them with paperwork that didn't exist. And every now and again you'd get somebody who's a good sport, and there was this one guy this one older guy, I remember, he cracked me up. I was like, "Where's your bathroom pass?" And he slaps his pants and he goes, "Oh man, I must have left it in my truck." And I was like, "All right, I'll let you by this time." And he's like, "Cool, man." And he snapped off and he left the bathroom and he's like, "Next time." And he would play that kind of skit with me. And I was like, respect. So So yeah, I took my job very seriously. And since I took my job so seriously, they ended up at one point letting us know that we were going to be getting a visit from a government official. And we had mixed responses on site about said government official. The government official that was coming to visit was none other than Obama. Now, that story is its own thing, so I'll get into that later. But I did end up meeting Obama. I did shake his hand, did get a picture. The picture exists. I will be sharing it at some point. That is a story for sure. So moving on from there. So I love that I'm skipping that one. So moving on from there, I ended up getting fired from that job for taking my job so seriously. And so I moved from that to basically being a degenerate for a while. I just decided I would try out being a complete piece of shit instead of getting my act together. So I was stealing. I was mostly stealing, actually. Stealing and doing drugs. I was going to go down a laundry list. But those two together, it's basically bad enough. And I stayed on that for a little while until I got to a bottom. And I remember I was sitting at the bottom. Wasn't quite at the basement, but I was at the bottom. And I was in a house that was so trashed that, it was unrecognizable. And I got a call from my dad, and he said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Are you sober?" Said, no, he didn't even say that. He said, "Come home and you're sober." That's all he said. Then he hung up. And I remember at that moment realizing that it wasn't something that I wanted to treat that disrespectfully anymore. And so I went home. After a few days, I sobered up. I got my head together eventually, and I went home. And I sat and talked with him, and he said, basically, you have three options. You are either going to go to college, figure out what you want, study something. You can go in the military, or you can die. Because that's the road you're heading down. So pick one. And those were really the only available options in Mobile at that time for someone my age and with the financial capability that we had at the time. And so I said, okay. And I ended up moving across the bay to Daphne, where my parents were living at that time. They had moved across the bay at this time. And began training to go into the military because I wanted to be somewhere that prevented me from doing all the things that I was doing before and that would save me. So it's about 2 years I lived with my parents, just training every day, cut off all my friends except for like a few that weren't toxic. I had so many toxic friends at that time. And went into the Air Force. Originally, I went in for Spec Ops. I wanted to be a PJ originally, but the eyesight that I had at the time was not conducive and was not within the parameters that they set. And so I wanted to be the PJ because it was medical, and I figured that saving people was like this moral gray area, that it didn't matter where you were saving people, that saving people was always okay, that it's important to have people who are funny and interactive and compassionate in multiple places in life, not just in entertainment places. It's really important for that to also be present in all the social spaces that it can be. Because I think it helps nourish connection. and respect. And so when I found that out, I was really bummed because at that point I had been training for a year and had put a lot of my heart and soul into this concept. And so at that time they said, so you can't do this, but we have this other job, which the military never does. And it was Special Ops Weather Team. If you don't know about Special Ops Weather Team, just look it up. SOWT, SOWT. It's the career field. And so I went in for that. So I did another year of training because I had to wait for that pipeline to open up. And then I jumped into that. Basic training, it's its own story. I'll tell that one later. When I started training, because of lack of conditioning, lack of proper nutrition, lack of a lot of things, I wasn't actually in shape properly for the beginning of my indoctrination for SOWT. And so you have to take a physical ability and stamina test before you are allowed to even start the class. And if you fail said test, you get booted right then and there, which I gotta say, looks like it hurts real bad. And so I took my pass test and I passed everything except for the pull-ups, which makes no sense. My back was super strong at this point, but for whatever reason, I don't know if I didn't stretch right or my shoulders weren't, front shoulder muscles weren't relaxed, or, something wasn't working properly. Because if I could do the rest of it, I couldn't do that. It just didn't make sense, but I digress. So what ended up happening was the cadre pull aside all the people that failed and ask them if they want to stay, if they want to try again, if they really, really want to be there. They're checking your mindset, checking your commitment level. And I, along with a few others, said absolutely. I said, cool, you're going to come prove it. And so we had to go do exercises of an extreme value and extremely tight timelines to prove our dedication, our effort. So this involved things like doing, 500 push-ups in 30 minutes, doing 600 straight flutter kicks, doing things like that, just fun little exercises. Whew. And but they were really vitally important because you don't want people there that aren't 100% committed, for sure. So because I went through that extracurricular stuff from the failure, I ended up getting a chance to try again. And so I was training while I was training. So I knew that I wanted to get my pull-ups up. So I was going in the mornings and getting on the rope and climbing the rope and practicing the climbing motion, and then climbing, getting on the pull-up bar, doing weighted pull-ups, and doing all these things before the Spec Ops training day would start to try to get a leg up. And then the day would start, and we would do anywhere between 3 to 6 hours of nonstop movement. This involved a mixture of weight training, CrossFit, but the type that doesn't hurt you, because we can't be injured. High amounts of cardio, lots of different guerrilla training exercises, a lot of groundwork stuff that incorporates like burpees and 8-count bodybuilders. And so we would do that all day long, and before that started, I'd work out my back, and after that was done, sometimes I'd still go work out my back. So it came time for the second test. After a few weeks, it was time for the next pipeline, and I come up to bat, missed again. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder if I belong here. I'm like, crap, I've put 2+ years into this, just nonstop dedication, and I can't do the pull-ups on this. This guy feels like maybe I don't belong here. I went and talked to the cadre, and he was like, you are baffling me right now. He's like, I've seen you do things that basically tell me that you have the upper body to do this, but you're not doing it. He's like, do you just not want to? He's like, I don't get it. And I was like, I don't either. And so we talked about it for a little bit, pretty cordially, which was not common. The cadre don't ever really want to be super chummy with you. They want to keep